What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to learn how to build a video calling app similar to FaceTime with Swift, the Stream SDK for video calling, and Firebase. If you're excited, destroy that like button down below. Let's open up Xcode and let's start building. So let me create a new project here. We will be working with UIKit. There are plenty of Swift UI examples, so I felt UIKit really gets into the weeds of how to implement this in existing projects perhaps. So I will call this my FaceTime. If you call it FaceTime, it'll conflict when installing on your device since Apple has their own app called FaceTime. So call it that. We don't need any persistence, no storage. So we'll continue here, save the project wherever you'd like. I'll toss it onto my desktop. And first things first, we're going to bring in the packages we need, i.e. Firebase as well as Stream. Before we do so, I do want to call out, I have a couple resources opened up here that we're going to be referencing. One, of course, Stream. If you're not familiar, they provide a lot of great infrastructure that's very plug and play for both chat and newly video and audio calling as well. They also offer activity feeds that I've done a previous video on, so maybe I'll link that in the description as well. So I've got their dashboard open up here. You can sign up and get started for free. I've also got a tab for some documentation where we're going to use a token later on. In addition, I have Firebase opened up and logged in here where we are going to be setting up our Firebase app as well as setting up authentication with email and password. So that all said and out of the way, let's go back to Xcode and we're going to do some housekeeping. Let's start with those packages. So we'll say add package dependencies under Firebase. And the first thing you can do is add the dependencies you want. I already have previously used both Stream and Firebase. If you're unfamiliar how to get them added here, I will link in the description below the URLs to paste here to the GitHub repo, and that'll basically resolve the packages. But let's go ahead and add this. Let it resolve. The first time it resolves, Xcode is a little slow, but just bear with it. It might be a minute or so. But since I've done it before, I believe it pulls from cache, so it's a little faster. So we'll start by adding Stream, and we'll do that one more time. We'll do File, add Packages, and let's search up Firebase in here. And we want Firebase iOS SDK, not the UI variant. And one actually thing that I noticed has changed in Xcode 15.2 is previously, you were able to check the packages or libraries within a package that you would like to bring in. It appears that isn't the case anymore. And in the case of Firebase, everything is brought in by default. You can manually remove it and choose not to embed/link it, but we'll do a faster way. So we're going to bring in everything here that it resolves from Firebase. And you'll see tons of packages. And in our package, project navigator here, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see this section, which is frameworks, libraries, and embedded content. And what we'll actually do in here is we will remove all the stuff that we don't want for today's video, and that's everything except for Firebase authentication. Of course, leave the Stream libraries in here, but anything Firebase related that's not authentication related, you can hold Command or Shift and kind of go through these and select these. This will not only obviously exclude these libraries, but it'll make your build time much faster as you build alongside this video. So let me just select all of these and being extra careful because it's easy to accidentally remove something we actually need. So let's hit minus. It'll ask you to confirm and you should be good to go. All right, so now that we've got this here, the next thing we want to do is set up our app in both the Stream dashboard as well as the Firebase instance. So we are going to need this bundle ID. So make sure you go ahead and grab it there, and let's jump to my browser. I'm going to create a new project in here, and I'll call it my FaceTime. Alrighty, we'll continue. We'll pretend like you read all this. It's for analytics. We'll continue and select the default account for Google Analytics that will be connected to our Firebase instance. And while that's actually doing its thing, we'll come back here to my other browser and we'll create an app in the Stream dashboard. And let's go ahead and fill all this jazz out. So I'll call this my FaceTime, and let's see what else we want in here. All right, so feed server location. I like to choose the one closest to me. I'm in the US on the East Coast, so I'll pick Ohio. And we'll do same for chat data storage. We'll do US East. We'll leave that as is. It's important to note, once this is set, it cannot be changed. The reason this is relevant for production and real world deployed applications is that where your data is stored is your source of truth. Stream has a pretty robust edge network around the world. If you're not familiar what that means, it means basically that wherever your users are, they'll be able to quickly get access to these services and connect to Stream resources efficiently, given that it's stored close to them. So let's see, clone an existing app. We don't want to clone any existing app, so we'll actually just leave this as is. Environment, we can do production or development. We'll stick with development for the time being, and we'll hit create app. And once we've created an app, we're going on the left here, and we're going to click into this section here for video and audio, and we'll hit overview. And you'll come to a screen like this. And let's stay put here, and let's go back to Firebase. Hopefully this is done. It looks like it is. And let's continue the setup over here. Now that we've created a project in Firebase, we need to add the iOS specific app. So we'll hit iOS. And this is where we're going to paste that bundle ID in that we copied from Xcode. We can leave the ID blank, but maybe we'll call this FaceTime iOS as the app name. Let's continue here, and if you're familiar with Firebase, you'll know that the next step will give us a Google Services property list file that we will download and drag into our project. This is what we use to essentially connect to Firebase and other Google services. And at this point, you can just hit next, 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 and it basically will tell us how to bring this into our project, which we'll do together momentarily. Now, before we exit or leave the Firebase console for a little bit, we are going to go to Build, Authentication, and we're going to be using emails and passwords to let users create accounts and sign in. So let's enable authentication here. And you'll see the offers that, the methods rather, I should say, that Firebase offers to let users sign in. So we'll choose email and password, and we'll turn the switch on, and don't forget to hit save, otherwise it, of course, won't work. And now that you've done that, we've done basically all the setup we'll need here in Firebase. We can head back to Xcode and do some more setup over here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll drag in this Google Services file that we got. Make sure that you're checking target membership and copy items if needed. And now that we've got that dragged in, I'll actually just move this to trash for my desktop since it should have been copied. Let me also full screen Xcode here, and let's do some more setup. So we are going to do everything programmatically, so I will right click the storyboard and hit delete. Once this pops up, we'll confirm and move to trash. Second, we are going to go in our project up here to the info tab, and inside this info tab, we want to delete the reference to the main storyboard by just selecting and hitting backspace. There is one other reference to the main storyboard inside of application scene manifest. So we'll open this up here as well and keep opening it up until you see the reference to main. You can select it and also hit backspace. Now that we've done this and we're already in this info plist section, we do want to add two privacy permission strings. So you can imagine for a video calling application, we want to access the user's video, i.e. camera, as well as microphone. And to do so, similar to any iOS app, you do need to prompt for permission, which requires a permission string. So let's hit enter and let's search for privacy, camera usage description, and we'll say, please allow access to share video during call. All right. And we'll do that one more time, and this time we'll do it for microphone. So we'll do privacy, microphone usage description, and I'll actually paste it in. And instead of share video, we'll do share audio. All right, so make sure you've got those there. If you forget to do those, you will actually see an error when you try to join a call or initiate a call later on. So now that we've done that, let me create some files on the left-hand side here and do a little bit of organization just to keep our project nice and tidy. So we're going to come over here and we will create a few files first. So first and foremost, we'll do a Swift file. I'm going to call this call manager, and this is essentially going to do what it sounds like it's going to do. It's going to handle calls, or rather it'll also handle connecting to stream video and being a wrapper on stream essentially. We'll also create a object here for authentication with Firebase, and I'll call this auth manager. And let me actually drag these up here. Let's create some folders. So I'll do right click and we can say new group, and I'll call this one managers. We'll drag this here. And let's actually jump into app delegate and just set up Firebase. The way we'll do this is as follows. We'll import Firebase core. You can also just import Firebase as well. And after the application does finish launching, before we return here, we can say Firebase app.configure. And before we give our application a first run and look to see where we're at, I'm also going to choose a simulator here. We'll stick with the 15 Pro Max. Before we do that, we do need to set up an initial view controller in our scene delegate. To make sure we can actually see that it appears, I will give it a background color of red. And I'll jump into the scene delegate here and just set up a window and scene. So we already have this code here from the template for our window scene. We're just going to call it window scene. We'll say window is a UI window with a window scene, pass in that window scene. The Windows root view controller for the time being, let's see, root view controller will be the default controller that the template gives us. We'll say window make key and visible and self.window equals window. All right, come on, autocomplete, awesome. So let's give this a build and run in our simulator. Hopefully we don't have any errors. We should see our simulator pop up here momentarily. The first time you build this after you bring in all those packages, it might take a minute or two, so just bear with it while it chugs along here. We will also be testing on device once we start getting into the world of joining a call and seeing video and all that good stuff, since video is not indeed supported on the simulator from Apple, since it is a simulated environment. So we've got the simulator booted up here. We should see a red background color once we hit that view controller like so. All right, good deal. So we've got our app set up, we've brought in dependencies, we've set up Firebase over here with the appropriate method to authenticate users. What do we want to do in this project? So what I think is helpful and what I like to do pretty often is create a kind of to-do list, if you will, of what we need to accomplish. So we need to be able to handle auth, which is sign up and sign in. We need to be able to join calls. So this is basically the stream integration. And it would also be nice if we can let the user sign out. So because video calling is the star of the show, the first thing I think we'll tackle is implementing how we'll connect to a call, join a call, and basically the stream integration. So let's jump into Call Manager, and we're going to start by importing stream video, and we want stream video, and I'll bring in all of these, I guess. So we'll do UI kits, and we'll also bring in Swift UI, and we're going to create a class called Call Manager, and we're going to use this as a singleton for two primary reasons. Number one, it's going to hold objects that we only want to create once. And number two, we're going to also leverage this to configure the client with our API key, which we'll grab from the Stream dashboard shortly, as well as a call view model. Okay, so now that we've got this singleton created here, let's create a function called setup. And it's going to take in an email address, and this is going to be the email address for the logged in user that we will pass in. And the other thing we'll do is we'll create another function here, and let me actually do it below, which will be private func setup call view model. All right, just like that. And these are the two functions that we'll need in here. And essentially what we'll do in here is first we'll say setup call view model, and after that we are going to create a user credential. We're going to set up stream video UI, and we'll also set up stream video. All right, so what is a user credential? Well, a user credential is going to wrap a user as it's represented in stream, as well as the user's token. So let's actually create that here. It's going to be a struct just to wrap those two things kind of nicely. And what we'll do is we'll say a user is of type user, and let's do a token is a user token like so. Now, tokens and users are really important to the theme of authentication and letting users connect here. Now, for the purposes of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to use a guest user with the email address for the user that is signed in. And the reason we're going to do that is because we would need in a production environment a backend setup to generate a JWT token to authenticate. However, what's nice is Stream has already included a kind of test token, if you will, here. And let me just copy and bring this on into our project. We can indeed use our own API key if I'm not mistaken. So let's bring this in and we'll give this a shot with this constant value so we can continue building. So we'll say constants, and here we'll have a constant, and this will be a user token. All right, just like that. And let's start some of this implementation. So, all right, user credential. What is user credential going to be? Well, it's going to be the thing we defined right up above. So we'll say user credential is this guy, and it takes a user, and you can create a user at bare minimum with a ID, but like I mentioned, we can also use guest users, and there's actually other types of users as well. You can use a guest, you can use a anonymous user. We're going to use guest, and we're going to use the email address as the user identifier. So we'll say email here. Now, token is going to be a user token, and we can actually create this directly with a raw value, which we're going to pull in from those constants that we defined right up above. So here is a struct, an object that represents our user credential, i.e. the user, as well as the token. All right, so now that we've got this set up here, the next thing we want to do is set up a stream video. So we'll say video equals stream video, and the video here is going to basically essentially use this. Now these are the bare minimum arguments that are needed, so we're going to bring in an API key from the dashboard momentarily. Our user is going to be from our credential.user token. Similarly, we're going to bring in credential.token, and then if I'm not mistaken, we should have a token provider here, which gives us a result. So realistically, this is where you can refresh your token via real backend in a production environment. But for now, what we'll do is we'll call result passing in a success case, and we'll just pass back credential.token, which is our hard-coded token that we've used from here. So good deal. We've got our video set up here. The next thing we want to do is set up the video UI. So we'll say video UI is stream video UI. And if I'm not mistaken, I can just pass in video directly here. And that's essentially all we need to do to connect to Stream with all this stuff in terms of setting up the client. We still need to implement setting up a call view model. And this call view model is an object that Stream provides that helps us join calls, start calls, and also observe incoming calls, i.e. state. So up here, we're going to define some properties. So the first thing I'll do is say our video is going to be stream video optional. And let me copy and paste this, since we'll do this a few times for a few different things. And this will be video UI, this will be call view model, and this will be call view model. Alrighty, everything optional. This one we are going to make sure is public and private set, since we will be accessing this from other objects in our project. So now that we've got all this jazz created here, what we can actually do is we can say self.video is video, self.video UI is video UI. Here we'll say make sure that the call view model is indeed nil before we continue here. In other words, make sure we're only calling this function once. And once we've done that, we can actually say our call view model is a call view model. Now, if you do get an error here for some reason, if you build like I am like there, you'll see that it's a main actor definition. So what we can do is either mark this class or this method as a main actor. The other option is you can also just dispatch it onto the main queue, and we can assign it like this, and that'll take care of that, since our context now is on the main queue as far as our threading concerns go. So cool, so we have this call manager thing now. Essentially, we'll want to set this up once the user has signed in, or if the app is launched and the user is already signed in, then we'll want to, set this up because we don't want the user to have to sign in every single time, because that would just be silly. So let's go back to our Explorer here, and let's jump into our auth manager, and let's implement this next. So the next thing we'll do here is import Firebase auth is what we're looking for. And we'll say here auth manager is this. This one will also be a singleton just for simplicity's sake. So we'll say auth manager, and we are going to have 3 functions here. The first one will be sign in, which is going to take an email, a password, as well as a completion block. You can of course use async await if you so choose to, and we are going to return a boolean. And I will actually copy and paste this 2 more times, and we're going to change this one to be sign up, and this one here will be sign out, like so. Don't forget to add those parentheses back. And let's just separate this a little bit. And I'm going to go through this Firebase piece a little quicker since I've got tons of videos on this, and I would like to focus more on the video calling aspect of this. But for sign out, pretty simple. We can do try, we can say auth from Firebase auth.signout. The reason we need a do catch here is because the sign out call can indeed throw a error. We are going to print out the error if one is thrown and caught. In terms of signing in, similarly here we will do auth.auth, and we're going to say sign in with email and password, and this is going to be email, and instead of link we want password. This will be password, and then this should have a completion as well, which gives us a resultant error. And what we'll do here is we'll say completion is if the error is indeed nil. And lastly, we're going to implement signing up, which will be auth.auth, and I believe this is create account, or create a user, I should say, with an email and password. Same thing as completion, so email, password, completion, and here we will say that we don't care about the result, and once again we've succeeded if the error is indeed no. Awesome. Now we're going to want to check state in our scene delegate in various places to know if the user is signed in or not. So here I will say is signed in, and essentially what we'll do is we can say auth dot auth. Let's try that one more time, auth.auth, and if the current user isn't nil, that means we're signed in, right? That means we have this current user object set, this property I should say, hence we are signed in and it is not nil. So let's jump into our scene delegate. So what we'll want to actually do here is something along the following. So here we're setting up our root controller, and for now we hard-coded it to view controller, but we'll want this to be a little more dynamic. So we'll say this is going to be a view controller, and here we'll say if auth manager.shared, if we're signed in, we want to do something, otherwise we want to do something else. Now I'm going to actually rename this view controller here since I like to have specific names. I think it's helpful. So here we'll say this is a welcome view controller, and I'm also going to stick that in the actual definition. And we'll create one more view controller, and I'm going to call that one account view controller. So essentially that's where we are in our logged in state where we should be able to join or start a call. So let's do account view controller. I will give a title in here. We'll call this account. I'll also give a background color of perhaps, let's do system green, which is the bright green color that I believe Apple uses for their FaceTime interface as well. And here I'll also toss in a title. This title will be sign in, and we don't want this obnoxious red anymore. Maybe we'll make this like a system blue. And let's jump back to our scene delegate if I could find it. All right, there we are. And instead of making this a root view controller directly, we'll embed this inside of a navigation controller and make its root view controller whatever we compute up here. So in the signed in states, we're going to have the account view controller, and in the signed out state, we'll have the sign in view controller. Let's try that one more time. Sign in. I think actually I called it welcome Yep, welcome view controller. All right, let's make sure we can build and compile. We'll do a command B. Looks like we are indeed building, and let's give it a build and run. Make sure we see that welcome screen here. Awesome, we do see that welcome screen. So let's actually take a quick look here at the dashboard for Stream. We've basically set up everything we need to sign in to Firebase. That should be good to go. Now, what we need to do whenever we make a call or want to join a call is we need to provide a call ID, and Stream themselves will recommend to use an ID that's pertinent to you, right? So for example, if you have an application where you have appointments or calendar invites and those have IDs, you probably want to use that ID, right? For our purpose, we're just going to use a random identifier, but specifically what we'll do is we are going to start a call here right in the browser, and that'll give us an ID, and we're going to join that call here from our device, and I'm going to run it on my physical device, and I will screencast it to this video so we can all see it together. Essentially, it would be the same interface for two different iOS devices speaking with each other, or calling each other, I should say. But I do want to point that out since it is important when we are building and in development mode, since we don't want to have to deal with setting up the backend initially to generate tokens. I will add that Stream does also provide server-side SDKs to take care of that for you. It is very quick and easy to set up, but I'd like to focus on building out the actual client application today in UIKit. So let's continue here. Now, before we set up the UI for signing in and signing up, which is rather straightforward, I want to focus on the calling related information. So here in our account view controller, what we want is essentially two things. So we're going to want a function, and this function is going to be join call. And then we also want another function, and this function is going to be listen for incoming calls, because that's pretty important, right? We should be able to get an incoming call and see the UI immediately. And then we want some UI util methods. So the first thing that we want is going to be private func, and this is going to be show call UI. And the next one is going to be hide call UI. So what we'll do in these methods is essentially show the UI that Stream does provide via their packages or SDKs, because building a call UI itself is really involved with all the nice bells and whistles of showing video and the mic and muting and all that jazz. So this is the structure that we'll have in here to initiate, or rather join a call, as well as listen for incoming calls. We do need that call view model that we created on our call manager. So what we'll start by doing here is we'll say guard let call view model, and this is going to be our call manager.shared, and this will be call view model, and it's optional, so we want to make sure we unwrap it. And this is the coolest part, in my opinion at least, about the way Stream has built this out, is you can actually just, with one more line of code, you can not only start a call with a call type, as well as the call ID and the members you want to include, but you can also join a call with a single call like this. So we'll say call type will be defaults. Now, I do want to actually point out that we do have different call types available. There's live streams, audio rooms, if you're familiar with an app like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, or X Spaces, I should call it maybe now. We also have development, but we'll stick with defaults. We also have a call ID string that we will need to provide. So we'll say call ID here. If we would be starting a call, we could provide, whatever unique new ID here, but the corresponding joinee would need to specify the same ID to join that same session. So once we have done this, once we've joined a call, presumably we haven't hit any snags, we want to show the call UI. And that's quite literally it, which is a little mind-blowing to me. For those of you who have worked with CallKit and other voice over IP or VoIP-related technologies, it is really involved to set up any type of call. So to me, this is brilliant. I think the beauty of what is provided here via Stream is the fact that it's so simple to get up and running in terms of the client side, right? As well as the server side too, in terms of generating tokens. You bring in the SDK and boom, it plug and plays and does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, letting you focus on what you want to do rather than building the infra for calling. So enough of me rambling, let's continue this implementation. So similarly, we need this call view model here. And what we'll want to do is we are going to want to observe the calling state, I believe is what's on here. So there should be a calling state. And we are going to use combine for this. So let me actually do two things. We're going to say import combine, and let me actually also import a few other things. We'll want to bring in all the stream jazz, so we'll do stream, and I just like to bulk import all this stuff so I don't have any issues later on. And here we will say that we want to basically do a sync on this, and we'll do weak self, and we'll do new state in, and we do want to store this, and this is going to be a cancelable for those familiar with combine. So here we'll say private var cancelables is going to be a set of any cancelable, and we'll initialize that as an empty set, and here we'll say cancelables like that. Hopefully I don't have a typo in there. And now that we've got this new state in here, we can actually switch on it or match cases directly. And the two that we care about are incoming calls and idle state. So I will switch on it just so we can follow some good practices. But here we'll have an incoming state. And this actually gives us some more information about the incoming call, but we're just going to ignore it. In today's video, we're not going to be integrating call kit and the whole 9 yards of like push notifications, but I do want to at least call out that it is available to you, so you can actually build a much more feature-rich experience if you so choose to do that. And then the other one we care about is idle. And then we'll also do default. We'll just break inside of here. So what we want to do in the incoming case is show call UI. In the idle state, we're going to hide the call UI. So we do want to do that on the main queue, since it is indeed a operation that will deal with the UI. So let's do that here. And let me copy and paste that right down below. All right. Try to build your project, make sure things are still building and in good shape. And these are the two other calling related methods to implement here. Now, how do we show the call UI? Well, Stream took care of that for you as well. So we can create our call view controller. So we'll say call VC is going to be call view controller. And this is a factory design pattern from my interpretation of this. But we can create this with a call view model. And it is nullable per the definition. But what I would suggest folks to do, just because we do need the call view model, is to unwrap it and just handle errors if one does, occur in terms of it being null. But here is how we create the call VC. And what we want to do now is we want to add this UI to this account view controller. So we've got this call VC. So we'll say view add subview call VC.view. We'll say call VC.view. Call VC.view.bounds is view.bounds, so it takes the entire bounds of our super view. And we also want to hang on to this call view because that's how we're going to essentially hide it or get rid of it. So here we'll say private var active call view is going to be of type UI view optional. And once we've shown this here, we can say active call view is going to essentially be call VC.view. And this guy's pretty simple. We're just going to say active call view, and we'll do remove from super view. And that's essentially all we need to be able to place calls. We also want the user to be able to sign out of their account. And when they're signed in, they'll have a similar UI to this. We want to be able to join calls and exit calls. So what I'll do for the time being as we continue to build is we're going to add bar button items. So at the top left, we should have a sign out button. And at the top right, we should have a join call button. So I'll say navigation item dot left bar button item is going to be UI bar button item, and it'll be a title, and this title will be sign outs. Style will be done, target will be self, and action will be sign out, which we'll create in a moment. And we can copy and paste this whole thing and change this one to join call and we can also change this to join call as well as change this left bar button to right bar button item, singular, not plural. We do need that sign out method, so we'll say sign out here will be, and you guessed it, we set this up earlier already. We have auth manager shared sign out, and once the user signs out, we want to show the welcome UI again. So I will say here the view controller we want to show is the navigation controller with the welcome view controller embedded inside of it. And we are going to say vc.modal presentation style is full screen so the user can't swipe it away. And finally here we'll do vc present animated true. All right, so we've done a whole lot here, and let's make sure that screen actually does what it's supposed to be doing. So what I'll actually do is I will, before we build out the UI to actually, create accounts and sign in directly, what I'll do is I will create a user account in app delegate as a brute force, just so we can test this jazz out. So here I will say auth manager, and I'll say shared, and we'll do sign up, and the email we'll use is joe@gmail.com. The password will be password, super secure, I'm aware. And we'll say if done, and we'll say guard done, else return. And actually, let's actually move this to the welcome view controller. So here we'll do this in view did appear. We'll do super.view did appear animated. And the reason we're moving it here is once the user's account is created, we could essentially just log them in directly. So on the main queue, we'll say self dot, we'll call it show account perhaps, just to make it a little clearer. Now we did self optional there because we don't want to leak memory. We want to capture weak self. And let's implement this function here to show the user's account. How do we do that? We're going to create a view controller, and it's going to be a navigation controller with its root controller as the account view controller, just like that. Awesome. The next thing we want to do here is we will say that the VC needs to be presented, animated true, and what I was actually getting at that I forgot is the VC's modal presentation style needs to be full screen. Now, one last thing that we got to do before I give this a run is you might recall we set up this call manager object, which does a bunch of setup, but we never actually used it. So we do actually want to use this. The way we will do so is as follows. So over here, once we sign in, or once this UI is shown, we should probably call this here. You can also choose to do so when the user does indeed sign up. So one thing you can do is here in the sign up and sign in functions, we can actually say the call manager shared setup, and the email is the email that's being passed in. So here we can say if error is indeed nil, which means we successfully have signed in, we can do that. Same thing for signing up. Go ahead and build, make sure things are still building. Now there's one case where this isn't handling, and that's if the user is already signed in. So back in our scene delegate, we can do the same thing in here. If the user is already signed in, the way that we get the email is as follows. We can say that the current user's email we can pull out of Firebase since we are storing it there for authentication. Don't forget to import Firebase auth. We'll say auth.auth current user email. And we'll say let email equals this, and we'll set up call manager with the email. So that's a lot of talking. Let me go and run this on the simulator. Let's make sure we are able to indeed sign in, even though we brute forced the account creation. But boom, there is the signed in UI. And over here in Firebase, if I refresh this page, we should actually see the new account created, which is joe@gmail.com. Apologies to Joe, whoever that might be, if that's an actual active email address. So let's come back to the welcome view controller, and I'll actually comment out this code. And let's give this a run again and make sure that we're still signed in. All right, we're still signed in. And if I click this, it should sign out. But let me try hitting join call and let's see what actually happens, even though I'm on a simulator. If I'm not mistaken, we should either get some logs or we should get some error because we're on a simulator. So we did get a nice toast there, that error starting call. And the reason for this is twofold. A, I should be testing this on a physical device. But B, if you recall what I mentioned earlier, here in the join call function, we actually provided some random call ID. So what we actually would like to do is the following. So let me come over here and I'm going to actually start a call right here in the browser. And to avoid my screen share getting screwed up, let me first actually enable this, which you guys actually, I guess, can't see, but I digress. We do want to take this information on the right over here and make sure it matches what we're doing in our project. So for our call manager, make sure your API key is indeed correct. It looks like we actually haven't even brought it in, so let's bring it in. Always good to double check. Now this also gives us a call ID. We're going to take this call ID and we are going to toss it into the call ID string argument here. Let's come back here. All right, so we've got a secret. We don't need that. Call type is default. It's created, and call status is that it's active. So let's give this a run again. And let's hit that and let's see what happens in the simulator. I will also run this on device momentarily, so I'll hit this. And just like that, we're actually joining a call. So it's gonna first ask me for microphone permission, alrighty. And it's actually showing that I'm in the call. Now obviously the video is not gonna show up because we are on a simulator. So if I actually hit this icon, I believe nothing should happen. And similarly, you'll see that the video is crossed off here. And if I join over here, and it's gonna ask me for permission from the browser, alrighty. And hopefully it's not echoing there and you guys can actually see me. So there I am. So let me mute this over here so we don't have a double echo. But you'll see we now have a call. I've joined from my browser over here and I've also joined over here, and you'll see that I can drag this around. And what's really cool about this is when you run this on device, you'll see that all these call controls at the bottom are functional. So you can mute yourself, you can flip the camera, you can exit the call, of course. You can also go back and the call stays pinned up here. So if you want to jump back to it, you can jump back to it as well. You can drag it around. You can exit the call and end the call. So if I end the call over here, you'll see that it'll jump back here, and I can also exit the call over here. And it actually went away by itself. And the reason it went away by itself is because we implemented the hide call UI. So essentially what happens is, because we're observing the call state will eventually cycle through and get to idle and say, hey, there is no incoming call or active call anymore. There are actually other cases here, like I previously alluded to. So if you're in a call, if you're joining a call, if you're in a lobby waiting to enter a group call, if you will, reconnecting if there is any relay issues, and then also outgoing calls if you're placing a call, you can do quite a bit of stuff. So what's nice is you have access to all the state that you would need to build all this out. So calling definitely working, the star of our show today. Let's build out the UI to sign in and sign up for our application, and that'll basically round out this fairly straightforward FaceTime clone, if you will. Now, in terms of starting a call, like I mentioned here, we can also do so instead of joining. So I can say, let me actually comment this out. I should also mention this code will be made available on GitHub for you to play with and as a reference. So I'm going to leave this commented out for folks in case you guys find it helpful. So we'll say call view model, and here we're going to also say start call. And we can actually also do screen sharing, if I forgot to mention that. There's a lot of stuff that is available to you here, which I think is honestly pretty cool because a lot of this stuff is pretty difficult to build out. So we'll do defaults here. For this, I'll say this is a random ID, so I'll use a UUID string, and we'll keep this empty. All right, so we'll keep members empty as well, participants, and I will hit this, which is actually joining a call rather than starting a call rather than joining. And you'll see that we get an error here. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, you will need to, as you continue to develop, let me actually leave this and comment it out. You will need to set up proper tokens in your backend to generate and authenticate. And the other thing that you'll want to do is you'll need to be mindful about creating a proper authentication system where you handle how users actually show up in your call, right? So if we come back to our call manager, what I mean by that is, in my case, we're just using guest and the email as their ID. So if I create guest here, you'll see that this takes a user ID, and I'm using that email address as the unique ID. Now, if you wanted to actually use a user object here, if I show what it takes, you'll notice that at minimum it needs an ID, but you can also pass a name, an image URL, let's try that again, a name, image URL, as well as custom data. Now, custom data can be wildly helpful, as you can imagine. So if I give a name here, let's give an ID, use my own name, and then you can provide a image URL, which is a nullable URL, as well as some custom data. What's really cool about this is the custom data is really helpful when you want to attribute a user. Maybe the user is in like a telemedicine application, one user is a doctor and the other user is a patient. You can tack on this additional data for users, and it's incredibly useful for other orthogonal workflows in your applications, right? So it's nice that while it's not required to implement it when you first put this together, it is available and at your disposal if you do require it in your application. So that all being said, let's implement signing out, signing in, and signing up, and that will wrap up this video. So we already have the sign out button there. So what we'll want to do is back in the account view controller, when we tap on that sign out button, instead of signing out immediately, what would be nice is if we saw an alert to confirm the sign out. So here I'll do alert controller, the title will be sign out, and the message will be, are you sure? And let's fix that typo there. And the type here will be an alert. Now, the next thing we're gonna want to do is present this alert animated true. And inside of here, we'll add 2 buttons, or 2 actions, I should say. So this here will be to cancel. This one will be cancel as well. And then the next one will be add action, we'll do init, and this one here will be sign out. And the style will be destructive, which is a scary word for a red colored icon, or label, I should say, but it's intentional, so the user knows that they're doing something that is quote unquote a big thing, which is signing out. And I'll put that code inside of here. So let's make sure we can sign out, and then we'll build the signing in UI. So when I hit this, we'll see this here. Are you sure? Cool, we're sure, and boom, we're signed out. So if I close and reopen this application, we should remain signed out. And since we're actually kind of polishing this now, I also took the liberty of grabbing a FaceTime icon from the internet. So we can actually jump into our assets catalog. And pro tip, if you're not familiar, you can hit Command-Shift-O to open up this quick search for your project. So let me grab this app icon and drag it in. Hopefully it's the appropriate size, which I believe it is. And let's give this a build and run one more time to get some icons showing up. A lot better than this, pretty bland looking icon. So let's make sure it shows up. Awesome. Look how cool that looks. And let's also change the display name while we're at it. So we'll go back to the project navigator and we'll change this to be FaceTime. Let's see if our simulator yells at us since it collides with Apple's name. I don't believe it should. Alrighty, and let's build out that UI. So let's jump into the welcome view controller. And we want to build out a view that's self-contained. So we're going to override load view. And I'll say let view is going to be a welcome view that will create like that. This view will have a delegate so we can handle when the user taps, sign in or sign up if we need to. And then finally, we'll say self.view will be view. Now this welcome view, its delegate is going to follow the naming convention. So we'll call this welcome view delegate. And let's create these files over here. So we'll create a subclass of a UI view called a welcome view. Alrighty, and let's do some implementation in here. So we are going to override the initializer for frame, and we do need to do this for NSCoder as well. We do want to declare that protocol here. So here we'll say delegate is any object. Now, what do we want on a welcome screen? Well, we certainly don't want the screen to be all blue because it's a little obnoxious. So let's actually change this here to be a system background color. For the view, so system background. And what we essentially want is a email and password field and a sign-in button, as well as a create account button that should add one more, rather instead of adding a field, it should change the button to say from sign in to sign up. So let's do that. So here what we'll do is we'll add some functions to our delegate, and we'll say did tap sign in, and this will take a email as well as a password, and these will be optional for the time being. I am going to refrain from going too deep into the weeds of architecture, but you should in theory have a view model to encapsulate the email and password, but I do want to keep it brief to get this up and running. So we have this protocol set up here, and let's stub out what I discussed momentarily of what we need. So we need a field for email and password. And then we also want a action button to either sign in or sign up, and a change state button to change from a sign in flow to a sign up flow. So let's go ahead and stub these out. So the first thing we want is a email field. All right, this email field will be a UI text field, and we'll type this out once, and I can copy and paste it for the password. So here we'll do field, and here we'll say keyboard type will be email, make it a little nicer. We'll give it a placeholder, and let's do field.placeholder. Sometimes autocomplete decides to not be helpful, so we'll say email address here. Here we'll do field.return is going to be next. Next up, we'll do field.left view. This is a bit of padding inside of the field itself. We'll do a UI view, CGRect, and this will be 0, 0, a width of 10 and height of 50, kind of some numbers that I've come to use pretty often. You can tweak it as you see fit. We'll say the left view mode is going to be always, so this left view always shows up. And finally, we're going to want to use constraints on this, so we will say translates auto resizing mask into constraints is false. So now that we've got this set up here, we can copy it below and just change it to be a password field, and here we will say password, and we do also want to say is secure entry, which is true, which essentially shows us the asterisks in the field rather than the characters themselves. You can also change this to be a standard keyboard, so we can just get rid of that. And that's basically the fields that we want. Let's create 2 buttons down below. So the first button, let's make sure this is private, so good habit and good practice to make sure our access control is valid here. So here what we'll do is we'll say that the button is a UI button. We'll say return button here, button.set title, and the first state will be to sign in. If the user changes it, we'll need to update this title, but for now it's sign in is all right. We'll make sure the title color is white. We'll set the background color of this to be blue, and we are going to want this to be laid out via constraints as well. So make sure to set the translate auto resizing mask into constraints property to be false. We want to copy and paste this button for the other button. So we'll say this is state button, and this one is going to be a little different. No background color on this one. And by default, this is going to say create account. Alrighty. And the title color is going to be the label color. So in light mode, it'll be black, and in dark mode, it'll be white. So now that we've got all of these created here, these elements, we also want to be able to handle what type of flow we're in. Are we signing in or signing up? So I will create an enum here for state, and this will either be sign in or sign up. By default, our state will be sign in, and we do want to hold that here. Now, if we build, we'll see some errors back in our controller because we do not have the implementation for the delegate yet. So let's stub out these functions. So I think it's sign in, did tap sign in, and did tap sign up. Alrighty, let's come back to our view, and let's actually add these as subviews. So we'll say add subview, and we want our email fields. Alrighty. And let's copy and paste this a total of 4 times to bring in our password. We want our button as well as our state button. Now, when we tap on the button, we want to handle it. So here we're going to say private func did tap button. This will be for the primary button, and this one is did tap state button. And essentially in our state button, what we'll do is we will switch on the current state. If the user is signed in, we're going to say that the state is now sign up, the opposite essentially. Otherwise, the state is now sign in. And the most important thing that we want to do is we want to update the text of the state button. So here we set this to create a count when the user is in the sign in state. So when the user is back in the sign in state, that is the same thing we want to do. And then in the state where the user goes from the sign in state to sign up, here we're going to say already, or we'll just call it sign in. All right, do a command B, make sure everything is building. If it's not, we need to go back and fix something. So let's come back here, and it's saying we don't have a delegate on this welcome view, and I believe it's because we forgot to add it here. So we created the protocol here, but we do need to also add a weak delegate pointer. All right, do a command B to build. Should be compiling, hopefully. And now we also want to add constraints to all of these subviews. So let's do ns layout constraint. And we're going to activate some constraints, and we're going to do it in order. So visually, we'll go from an email field, password fields, your action button, so sign in or sign up, and then the state button. So let's do it as such. So we'll say email field dot left anchor is going to be constraint equals to safe area layout guide. Left anchor constant will be 20. And we'll do the same thing for the right anchor, and that'll also implicitly give us our width. We'll do a top anchor as well. So here we'll say that this is the safe area layout guide top anchor. Constant is 20. And finally, for our email field, we will say that it has a height anchor, and this one will be a constant. And this constant will be 50. You can play with that number as you see fit. I think 50 is a nice number to get a nice visual consistency, but to each their own. We'll copy and paste this for the password field, and the only thing that is going to change is the top anchor reference. So here we're going to have the password field be 20 away from the bottom of the email field. All right, the copy and pasting shall continue. Next up, we'll have the button. And once more, the only thing that'll be different here is the reference to the password field dot bottom anchor. And finally, last but certainly not least, we're gonna have the state button, not the state itself, we want the state button. All right, let's copy and paste that. And finally, this one will be from the bottom of the button. So go ahead and give this a build and run, and let's see if our UI shows up, if it looks as expected, or if it's kind of wonky. It does look like it did show up. Our field probably needs a bit of a background color, and we do want to get rid of this kind of obnoxious blue color. So back in our controller, we can get rid of this. We can change the title to be welcome. Alrighty. And okay, so it looks like we're in pretty good shape. If I hit create account, it looks like nothing is happening because I believe we forgot to tie those buttons to those actions that we defined below. The other thing that I think visually should be a little nicer is we should probably add a background color to our fields so they're a little more legible. So here we'll say a background color here will be something like a secondary system background, and we'll do that for both fields. And let's tie our buttons to the actions we created down below for them. So we'll say add target. The selector will be did tap button here, and the event will be touch up inside. And we want to do this for the state button as well, but just make sure you don't forget to update the state button prefix there. So it looks like we have some problems here. Let's see what the issue is. It's saying fields. This should be background color. Be careful when using autocomplete and then copying and pasting what autocomplete gives you, but let's correct that and continue. All right, looking way better. So let's say create account. This changes. We also should change this sign in to now sign up. So let's do that as well. So in the case where we're now signing up, we want the button title to now say sign up for normal, and then in this case, in the other case below it, we want it to say sign in. And you might have noticed that we changed the title up here to welcome, so we don't have to flip that from sign in and sign up as well. Welcome is kind of neutral, so it should be good to go. So once we tap on the button, what do we want to actually do? Well, we actually want to switch again on these cases, and based on whatever state we're in, we want to call a delegate function. So here we'll say did tap sign in, email will be email field.text, password field.text, and in this case, very similar, this one will be did tap sign up. Let's come back here, give this a build and run, make sure things are indeed showing up. All right, they are showing up. We tap on this, nothing is happening. And in this case, it does change to sign up. All right, so our button is working there. The last thing to do is implement the actual sign in and sign up back in our controller, and we'll have a full round in terms of authentication. So let's jump back into the welcome view controller, and let's implement these. So when we're signing in and signing up, we want to, in both cases, make sure we have a valid email and password. So if we have an email and we have a password, we can continue. Otherwise, we should probably show an alert, something along the lines of, hey, you need to enter a proper email password. So we'll say invalid entry. Please provide valid email password. All right, preferred style will be an alert since we don't want a action sheet. And let's go and present this, guys. We'll say present the alert. Animated will be true. And we're gonna say alert.add action, and we're gonna create this, and this will be dismiss as a title and cancel as the style here. And for the sign-in case, we already actually wrote the code up here. So this is the sign up case, but I'm gonna take this whole thing and we'll delete view did appear since we don't have any implementation in there anymore. And here we'll change this to be sign in. And I believe that should be all we need to do. So we need to make sure we pass in the email and the password from the input arguments rather than the hard coding values we were using before. But we should be able to reuse the bulk of this code for signing up. The difference now is that sign in, boom, sign up. And I believe we should be good to go. Let's give this a build and run, and let's see if it works. So we had created a single controller here, joe@gmail.com. Let's see if good old Joe can log in. So joe@gmail.com. It looks like we're getting Joe. J is capitalized. We might want to tweak that. And I believe password was password. And boom, we're able to sign in. So let's see if the sign in actually persists. So if I close and reopen, all right. Let's go back and create a new account. So here, let's say I want to create an account, and this is going to be me@gmail.com, and we'll say the password is password, and we should be able to sign in. All right, let me close the app and reopen. Should stay signed in, and let's come back here to Firebase and refresh this page. And just like that, we should have a new user, which is me. This is also, by the way, not my real email, so please don't use this email to actually try to reach out to me. So there you have it. That's how you can actually integrate Stream into your application to set up a video calling experience. Just to do a quick refresher, Firebase as the backend as a service here for authentication. You still need to integrate the Stream SDK to generate tokens to authenticate with Stream. Over here in the Stream dashboard, we used this token as the example token that they provided in their documentation. In the dashboard here, we created a call to actually see how this works. One other thing that I would like to call out before we wrap up here is you can actually come in here and see that there's different types of call types already supported, and you can actually even add your own call type, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. Most of the time when you're using some of these applications, be it Twitter Spaces or FaceTime or what have you, folks don't really think about how this works, but you can actually create different types. Whether it's a live stream, maybe you want to have a certain type of classification, you can do that in here. You can also create, roles and permissions over here. You can set up different roles and permissions of who is allowed to do what. So there's updating your own user, things of that nature. In addition, you have logs over here. So if something ever goes wrong, let's say we saw where we weren't able to, start a call, we can actually click on this. It's a 403, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a unauthorized. So it's saying there's a guest user ID. Here's everything that happened. Here is the actual error message: join call failed with error, user guest, and then my long ID. Guest is not allowed to perform action create call in scope video default. So this is what I was mentioning in terms of permissions and scope. So if you want to come in here and give permissions to different types of users and roles as you're building and developing, it's helpful to do so. I encourage folks to be familiar with the dashboard here, since you're going to end up spending so much time in it. And push notifications. I mentioned this as well earlier. The Stream dashboard supports APN, which is Apple's push notifications. You can also set up cloud messaging in Firebase, which is what we have actually used here to set up our backend. I've got a dedicated video on Firebase push notifications as well. They also support Huawei as well as Xiaomi, so their respective push notification offerings. So that is all I've got for you guys in this video today. Hope you enjoyed. Once again, all this code will be made available. Before you click away, make sure you destroy that like button for the algorithm. Let me know in the comments if you had any questions, connect on all the socials, and check out Stream. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.